The original NBA Playgrounds launched on the Switch in May 2017 and was, to put it bluntly, a disaster. A catalogue of issues, both technically and poor communication from the developers, eventually ended in January 2018 when the original game was pulled from the store and a new and improved version was launched to replace it. But it was very much a case of too little, too late. Publishing giant 2K must have seen the potential in the Playgrounds brand and jumped into bed with Sabre Interactive to help add some polish to the sequel, which was in development, and this was eventually rebranded NBA 2K Playgrounds 2. Along with adding some legitimacy to the new game, 2K also brought to the table the despised microtransaction system, but more on that later. So, with the history lesson over, let me welcome you to SwitchedOn and join me as I review NBA 2K Playgrounds 2 on the Nintendo Switch. Now, first up, story mode. There's obviously no story really to speak of here, as it's a sports game. There is what is probably the crowning glory of Playgrounds 2 though, and that is the new Seasons mode. This gives you the chance to pick a two-man team and blast through a shortened NBA season, along with the season-ending playoff competition to crown the best overall team. For me, this was a game changer, if you excuse the pun. I found myself disinterested in the original game very quickly, with only the World Tour mode to play, and my progression would very frequently bottleneck, where I just couldn't progress any further. But now, with this season mode, losses only hurt your league standing and not your progress, and with games only 3 minutes long, you can easily blitz through a season in a couple of very enjoyable hours. The 3-point contest returns from the re-released enhanced version, along with standard exhibition games and online multiplayer. Let's have a look at the sound and graphics. Another tick in the improved column here, as everything is given a fresh facelift from the first game. Player models for the most part look decent, although the lower resolution graphics output on handheld mode can look a little smudgy or blurry in places, but as I say, it's a step up. Some of the reflections, shadows and other enhanced graphical improvements from the other versions of the game are removed in the Switch version, but again, it's nothing that should ultimately spoil your enjoyment of the game. It should be noted though, I'm not really somebody that plays Switch games for amazing graphics. There are a good variation of courts to play on here as well, with the season mode taking place on slightly more official looking, although still outdoor, courts, which is a nice touch, and exhibition matches taking you all over the world to various different outdoor locations. The game also ran fine for me, with no noticeable slowdown or any other issues. Some people have reported frame drops here and there in handheld mode, but again, for me, if they were there, they didn't cause me any need to note them down. The same song from the first game reappears, which is a bit odd, and the NBA Jam style commentary remains and suits the style of game well, without grating too much. I'm going to give the sound a 6 and the graphics a 7.5 out of 10. Now on to gameplay. And for me, if a game is fun to play, then I can look past slightly lower resolutions or the odd performance issue to a large degree, and it cannot be denied that the game is a ton of fun to play. It certainly feels with their NBA 2K experience, 2K have had a hand in tightening up the gameplay from Sabre's decent work on the first. Everything feels just a bit snappier, jazzier and just a bit more fun to play. The frantic end-to-end action is as good as ever in these sort of arcade sports games, and whether on defence or offence, you can have that fist-pumping moment many times over the course of a game. Denying a clear basket from your opponent with a perfectly timed leap and a big swat of the ball feels satisfying. The core gameplay of over-the-top 2v2 basketball retains its NBA Jam roots, but adds in modern twists, with power-ups that can be activated when you're on a hot streak, and post-game XP and currency doled out to allow you to level up your players from bronze level all the way up to platinum, gaining them new moves and improving their stats. Controls remain largely unchanged, and it's a simple game to pick up and play, with the only minor complication I guess coming from the combo of buttons needed for the various alley-oop moves. A slightly revised shot meter returns, and whilst it's still unfortunately awkwardly placed at the foot of the screen, it's somehow more readable now out of your peripheral vision, and nailing those threes should start to come with a bit of practice. It's still a slightly odd system where you can hit the perfect shot in the green section of the bar and still miss the basket. I personally quite like this, as whilst it's based on the human player's skill of stopping the meter, the game's stats of the shooting player are still very important. This helps to make each player feel significantly different, and knowing when to pass off to a 3-point specialist, for example, is the key to making more long shots than not. Load times are generally okay, which is another improvement. And could they be quicker? Sure they can, but as I said, you can rattle through a season so quickly, and every 3-minute game is usually a tense and exciting affair, and it's nice to have a little enforced break between games. A lot has been made of 2K's involvement, as I mentioned earlier, specifically introducing microtransactions into the mix. There are 2 types of currency in the game. One allows you to purchase packs of cards, which in turn unlocks new players for the game, and the second currency is there to allow you to buy clothing and other customization bits and bobs. Like any game with this sort of setup, there is a grind to getting currency, but I didn't feel like it was too bad, to be honest. Plenty of coins can be picked up during the season, and generally after finishing a season you should be in a position to pick up a couple of the lower level packs, or a gold pack after a couple of seasons. As I generally tended to stick with the same 2 players each season, I didn't see the need to constantly be unlocking players. I'd play one season with 2 players and then unlock a few more cards and consider my options for my team for the next season. There is an option in the game to pay around £5 to unlock every player with a one-time purchase, but for me that would take half the fun of the game away and not really leave much to aim for. If you're someone that despises these sort of setups, and believe me I do understand that way of thinking, then this game will most likely make your blood boil. It wasn't something that personally affected me, but it's only fair that I bring it up in the review. And finally, online mode works nicely, with the matches I had connecting quickly and running with little issue or lag. The returning 3-point mode can also be played online, and this is a really nice diversion to the standard gameplay. Overall, gameplay gets a very good 8.5 out of 10. Now let's talk about the value of this game, and you can kind of feel 2K's influence in the price here too. £25 in the UK appears a slightly high price, especially when you factor in the possible need for microtransactions, or another £5 on top to unlock the full roster if that's the way you want to go. What you do get here though is value for money, and it's a sports game with almost infinite replayability, a grindy unlock system that can take many hours to see through to the end, and a robust online mode. Whilst £25 is the top end of the sort of mid-tier pricing for these games, as a sports fan I'm just about okay with it. If you're more of a casual fan, you may want to wait for a slightly lower price sale. So in closing, if you're a fan of the arcade sports games of old, obviously NBA Jam being the biggest influence here, then this should definitely be on your radar, and there's also enough new ideas in Playground for it to be relevant in 2018. Its slightly higher price plus the introduction of microtransactions can make this an expensive proposition, and that has to be a consideration. But with hours of fast and fun gameplay, hundreds of players to unlock and level up, and a solid online offering, I'm going to give NBA 2K Playgrounds 2 on the Nintendo Switch an 8 out of 10.